Are you staying? You're not staying? I'd really love for you to stay because you could. Please stay just for my testimony.
Sir, you have any copies of the statement?
I do. I'm sorry. It's just handwritten. Thank you. Please stay for just 5 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. And also, just for the record, we also handed them a copy of the documentary, so hopefully they will view it and respond in any ways.
It's 70 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's 70 minutes long, but.
Tish, we all have a homework assignment tonight, so. I have committed to see this evening, so by the next hearing, which we'll probably invite you back to.
That'd be wonderful.
We'll have some questions for you then
Right.
after viewing. But previewing it, please state your name, your
You got it.
association, and your testimony today.
Yeah, my name is Dan Lohaus, and I'm the director of a film called When I Came Home, which was just premiered in the Tribeca Film Festival. It's all about homeless Iraq War veterans in New York. And I apologize for being emotional. I don't know who I should be angry at. I'm just angry, and I really wish he would have stayed around because I'm getting the sense that he really needs to learn some things about what's going on. And I was going to tell him, in the last 2 years, since this article came out, Homeless Hero, New York Post, we're starting to see homeless Iraq War vets in New York. I don't know if he didn't see the article. But in the last 2 years, I've taken...
Sergeant at Arms, can you get that article just so that the members can peruse it? We'll give it right back to you.
Oh, sure.
We just want to take a look at the article.
What I was going to tell Mr. Hurwitz was...
You can start out with Councilmember James there. Take a look at the article, pass it down to the other members. Please proceed.
I was going to tell him that, in the last 2 years, I don't know what's happened in City Hall. I don't know what's happened within the walls of DHS. I just know what's happened on the outside. And I've taken in 3 homeless Iraq War vets onto my couch in my apartment. And I was going to tell him to do the same. Because when you do that, you really get a good education in what services are and are not available to veterans. And I learned a heck of a lot. I'd like to say this. 2 years ago, when that article came out, and I was looking for subjects for the film, because I thought it was very important to show that what happened to Vietnam vets is basically happening again. I went to Mr. Singh at Black Veterans for Social Justice, and at that time, 2 years ago, there were, a handful in New York. We could name them by name who the homeless Iraq War veterans, not Gulf War. And what is really disturbing to me is that now, 2 years later, I do have to say that 2 years ago we did come before City Council, and we did, Paul Rykoff from Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America said, it's actually in the film, you'll see it tonight, said, we do have homeless Iraq War vets in New York now. I know it's flabbergasting to hear, but it is happening. Now, 2 years later, Mr. Singh at Black Veterans for Social Justice, I'm sure some of these other agencies, they're seeing, depending on troop movement, 3 or 4 homeless Iraq veterans a week walking in their door. So we've gone from a handful to 3 or 4 a week. Nationally, we've gone from estimates of 50 or 100 to now the VA is admitting nationally that there are over 600 homeless Iraq War veterans, either from Iraq or Afghanistan. And if the VA is admitting to 600, there's probably a lot more. And I'm not even mentioning the folks that are coming in his door at risk of being homeless. So obviously more needs to be done. I don't know who I should be angry at. I'm just angry. I'd like to say that what I found with the veterans that stayed in my apartment that I filmed, when they go to the VA, they are referred to the emergency assistance unit. From what I can tell, there are no places that veterans can walk in and say, I am broke, my wife just left me, I have post-traumatic stress disorder, I have nothing, I don't know where to go tonight. Getting referred to the EAU, you know what happened to Harold in the movie, you'll see it. All his medals were stolen, all his clothes were stolen. So, as he says, he just went from one combat situation to the next. And I know they're good people running these shelters, but they don't have the resources to make them the kind of places that they should be. I mean, Harold, you'll see in the movie, I don't want to blow the movie, but he wanted to re-enlist because he felt like he was treated better in Iraq than he was in New York City. And that's the reality of it. So I suggest to, I don't know who Mr. Hurwitz or whoever, take an Iraq vet in. Take one in, put them on your couch, and you'll really see what they're going through. The other thing Harold and the other veterans in the film were struggling with, were trying to get Section 8 vouchers. As Harold says in the movie, I joined the military so I could get out of the projects. Now I can't even get back into them. And you'll see in the movie that, I mean, there is no Section 8 available. You probably know better than I do, but especially for veterans. Here's a concept. Taking buildings on VA property that are defunct and turning them into transitional supportive housing for veterans. That's what US Vets does. I think we should take a look at that, and I think we should take a look at making Section 8 available to veterans. I mean, even Harold said, I'll still be going back into the projects. I'll still be hearing gunshots, and that's not going to help my PTSD. But at least I'll have a roof over my head. I mean, maybe we could take a look at St. Albans and Queens, but I think that's a noble concept. And how about providing jobs for veterans, renovating those defunct buildings on VA property to turn it into supportive, affordable housing for the vets? It just makes me upset that this has to become a huge problem before we start studying it and looking at it. I mean, let's take a look at Vietnam vets. There's 150,000 homeless Vietnam vets still out there on the street. There's our study. They're going through the same thing. They're coming back to, a country that is basically telling them that what they did was meaningless, a country that is denying them benefits. It's just the same thing all over again. So I'll just end by saying, let's hope if we come back 2 years from now, we're celebrating cutting ribbons on transitional housing. We're celebrating the fact that New York City stepped up and showed the rest of the country how to do it. And I appreciate the time here today, and I appreciate you all watching the film, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dan, for your testimony. Just for the record, in the last 2 budget cycles, there was an initiative that was proposed that was cut at the last point in the budgetary process to, at the very least, for the city to provide resource centers in the five boroughs, and at least 3 of the 5 boroughs. I think it was unfortunate that did not happen. I'm hopeful once again that finally this year the City Council will actually put its money where its mouth is and actually provide service to our veterans as opposed to just lip service and presentations at ceremonies. So I concur that there needs to be more done. It's unfortunate that our city currently does very little, next to nothing, in my opinion, in particular when you compare it to a $54 billion budget. I think the last estimate we looked at is we perhaps spend about $80,000 on the Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs, which I think is not only disheartening, but it's absolutely, it's 180, but half of that money comes from the state, the other half is city. So our actual investment is minuscule. And when you look at the type of programs that this city funds, many, if not all of them, very much deserving, but what is more deserving than providing services to our vets?